Amy, just before we get to Steve Moore, one more comment about that pharmaceutical giant Takeda pulling out of Deerfield and moving 1,000 jobs from Illinois to Boston. The state senator from up that way, she tried to blame this on Rauner, right? The Takeda got here in 2008.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Julie Morrison is her name, and she...
You've spoken about her before.
Yes, and it wasn't in glowing terms.
No.
And so let me repeat those less than glowing terms. She is a stone-ass idiot.
Wow.
And for people in Deerfield on the North Shore, watching Takeda take 1,000 jobs and probably 1,000 of your friends and neighbors out of here to Boston, take stock of your local elected officials. She is a moron, Julie Morrison. And you actually have a chance to do something different up there. You've had a chance before with previous candidates, like a pediatrician, Navy helicopter pilot, Nari Friedman. But he didn't cut the mustard for all the geniuses and professionals up in Deerfield in that area. Well, you've got another chance this cycle. There's a Senate candidate, an actual job creator and business person and professional whose IQ, I can assure you, is above room temperature, which makes it double Julie Morrison's at minimum. His name's Barrett Davy. So why don't you, those listening up there, watching Takeda pack up all their stuff in bankers' boxes, why don't you go knock on your neighbor's door and shake some sense into them? Okay. Had to get that out of my system. Good news nationally, if not locally. The good news nationally comes from the Census Bureau, which tells us that crossing the $61,000 per year mark signals the American middle class are finally earning more than it did in 1999 in terms of, in real dollars, stagnant household incomes. We're seeing middle class incomes rise, and importantly, little evidence of rising income inequality. A Gini coefficient, so-called, that measures such, is static. So
you know who we have to thank for this?
It's not the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. It's the middle-income families getting richer, and that's good news.
Yeah, tops 61,000 for the first time ever. We have President Obama to thank for this, right?
I remember that from his speech
Yeah.
on Friday at U of I. Yeah, actually, shockingly, by the way. The Associated Press did a fact check of Obama's speech at U of I.
Really? Yeah.
And it was actually accurate, meaning accurately critical of all of the spewage that emanated from the orifice in the middle of Obama's head down in Champaign.
The AP?
The AP of all. I mean, will wonders never cease? Speaking of wonderment, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Steve Moore, Wall Street Journal columnist, chief economist for CNN. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Hi, guys. Good morning. I just caught the tail end of that discussion about that company that's moving. Did you say they're moving from Chicago area to Boston or Boston?
Boston, 1,000 jobs pulled out of Deerfield and going to Boston.
Boston, Massachusetts.
Correct.
Yep.
That's pretty bad. When you're losing jobs to Massachusetts, the alarm bells should probably be going off.
Yeah.
Massachusetts looks good compared to Illinois right now, though.
You're right. The alarm bells should be going off.
When you guys lose jobs to West Virginia and Kentucky.
and population. Yeah, exactly. No question. Well, on the good news front, what about rising income?
It is the story of the year, if not the decade, because what happened. We used to talk to Trump about this all the time, Larry Kudlow and I, that the big problem with the American economy, and especially this vaunted recovery. Remember, Trump, Obama kept saying, "I started this recovery." Well, for so much of America, there was no recovery. I mean, I used to go on the campaign trail. We'd go to Ohio, we'd go to Pennsylvania, we'd go to Illinois, we'd go to these states in the Midwest, Iowa, Wisconsin. And I remember we would go to these small towns, and I'd ask people, "How is the Obama recovery going for you?" And you know what people would say?
What recovery?
What recovery are you talking about? Because it really was. It was a recovery if you lived in Wall Street, or if you lived in Silicon Valley, or if you lived in, of course, Washington, D.C. But for so many of these other areas, there was no real recovery at all. And so what was happening was that middle-class wages, and by the way, just so you don't think I'm being some kind of partisan here, the stagnation really started under Bush. And so you had stagnant incomes under Bush, and then you had stagnant incomes under Obama. And so it was almost 20 years, Dan and Amy, that the middle-class families had not seen a pay raise, an increase in their take-home pay. And now what we're seeing is some really nice gains. And my buddy Kevin Hassett, who's the chief economist at he's the chief economist for the president, he put out a report last week saying, look, if you take into account our tax cut and you take into account that people are getting more benefits and bonuses, and then you take into account the fact that the people are working more hours because people are getting more overtime and so on, he found that the average income for families last year went up about 4 or 5%. That's like the biggest gain in 2 decades. So this is good news, and I'm glad you're reporting it because nobody else seems to want to report this. Finally, the middle class is seeing gains. And I'll say one other thing: the left kept disparaging the Trump tax cut as something that was for the rich. You know, they still say that to this day. The Illinois politicians say it all the time. This was not about the rich. I like rich people. Donald Trump likes rich people. But this was about creating a tighter labor market, providing more job opportunities for people in the middle class so they can climb the economic ladder. And, you get a tighter labor market and you get, employees and workers with some bargaining power. And that's exactly what they have right now.
Well, do you think that this trend is going to continue for the middle class? Well,
I only laugh because, when I'm on CNN, they say, yes, the news is, we have to they finally admitted on CNN the economy is booming. For the first time, they finally admitted that this week. But then, when they say that, they say, but it can't continue. Well, look, I think it can continue. There's no reason we couldn't see this go on for another couple of years, which would be fantastic. Now, what do you think? Okay, here's your economics quiz question, Dave. What do you think today is the biggest constraint on growth in keeping this 3.5% to 4% growth path going?
The fact that Jamie Dimon isn't the president of the United States.
I didn't hear you. What?
The fact that Jamie Dimon isn't the president of the United States.
Yes. Ding, 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 ding. No, it's the fact that there are just not enough workers out there. I mean, we're really seeing the worker shortage now really, starting to have a negative effect on the growth rate because, if businesses can't get the workers here they need, unfortunately, some of those factories may leave the United States and go to, China or India where there are workers. So we need to get all hands on deck. We need to do the work for welfare reforms. We've got to get, young people working off their butts and working and all these things because that's the biggest problem right now. I talk to employers all over the country. I'll bet a lot of the employers listening to this show are feeling the same constraint. Where are the good workers that I can hire to do all this job?
We went last month to Black Hills, South Dakota, and I cannot believe all of the resorts have all these HB1 visa people here that, and they house them and give them meals because they need workers. They need people to help out. It's amazing. It's a whole other different culture there.
Well, one thing we need, Amy, it's a great point, and a lot of these industries that have shortages, they've been, historically dependent on immigrant workers, and we need more immigrants right now. We need more immigrants who want to come into the country and work. I'm not for illegal immigration, and I'm certainly not for immigrants getting welfare, but I am in favor of letting people who are talented and skilled and motivated come to this country and experience the American dream and contribute to our society. We need that now. We really do, because these businesses, let's take the example in agriculture where, migrant workers have been working in the fields in the United States for the last 100 years. And let's face it, we're not going to get American workers to do that kind of stuff. So why shouldn't we have more of the agriculture guest workers so that they can come in and earn a good living and then go back to Mexico or Central America, where they come from. So that's another big problem, but it's a good problem to have. That's the point I want to make to you guys. It's a really good thing when you have 6 million more jobs open than workers than when you have 6 million more workers than jobs.
And it's a really good thing to provide some concrete evidence that those crumbs that Nancy Pelosi talks about actually add up into real dollars. So a good little Econ 101 lesson for the kids out there. I wanted to get your take on another matter, Steve. It's been...
No, but before you mention that, Dan,
sure.
can I just say one other quick thing
sure.
about a comment you made? That you mentioned the Gini index, which you said has did it fall or did it stay level?
Yeah, level.
So that is a reversal. This is the irony of the Obama presidency. Every year, except for one of the 8 years that Barack Obama was president, this president was going to return economic fairness and reduce the gap between the rich and poor. Every single year that Barack Obama was president, except for one, the Gini index rose, which means income inequality got wider.
Yeah, there's no question. You mentioned
that's what
before.
happens when liberals come into office.
And it's happening. There's a laboratory where people can watch these experiments play out in real time. It's called the state of California, the state of Illinois too. But let's talk about California because it's been a heck of a week out in California. Let's see. We started the week announcing that fossil fuels will be banned there. Then we had the imposition of or legislation moving through Sacramento to impose quotas on the gender composition of corporate boards. Now the California Supreme Court is changing the way independent contractors are classified, such that entrepreneurs, small business owners like barbershops would have to treat people who work a chair and have their own book of business in a barbershop, rent a chair or whatever. They would have to be full-time employees. One Sacramento barbershop owner said, "I lost my entire staff. All 7 barbers quit after that Supreme Court ruling that changes the way they work." So you have those examples for the socialists like Kamala Harris, a presidential aspirant, to address while other states and the country generally under Trump is moving in a different direction.
So I'm almost afraid that we're having this discussion because Sacramento may give Springfield, Illinois, some really bad ideas.
No kidding.
It seems like these ideas start in California and then they go to Springfield. But you're right. I mean, California has become Looney Tunes. By the way, do you know? This is a little secret, so please don't spread this around. But
sure.
I get my hair cut. From the woman who lives next door, and she doesn't have a license to cut hair.
Oh goodness!
There you go.
All right.
Tossing somebody.
She should probably go to jail, right?
Yeah, she's gonna have to be on the land
and I
now.
give her $10, and she's not a professional.
We see that when you're on CNN. We see that she's not a professional.
But the other thing I don't think you mentioned in that list of crazy things that are going on the left coast, is that they now have a measure that has passed the state house that would require, I think it's by the year 2030, 2035, 100% of all electricity generation from in the state of California has to come from wind and solar power.
Right.
That is insanity. That is crazy. Right now, we get maybe 4 or 5% of nationally, we get about 4 or 5% of our electric power from wind and solar. They want to go from 5% to 100%.
Good luck with that.
It's a moonshot.
So they're going to have solar panel hats. Everyone's going to have their own hat on.
Like
that's what I was thinking.
They're going to look like V. Stiviano.
Yeah. A friend of mine is a fireman. And I guess firefighter is the politically correct term now.
Please.
And he was saying, that one of the problems that they are now facing is all of these homes have solar panels on the roof, and oftentimes when you have bad fire, you have to go through the roof, and they can't do it because of the solar panels. So they're making these homes more dangerous. But can you imagine that? I mean, here we have an abundance of natural gas, we have an abundance of coal, more gas and coal than any other country in the world, and we're not going to use it. We're going to put solar panels on every house, and we're going to use windmills, like a 19th century technology to provide electricity.
Steve.
I mean, that's a very, very it's laughable, but it's dangerous. I mean, if you want to screw up a state or national economy, screw up with their electric power system.
Yeah, well, Steve, Gray Davis style. Steve, ask not what California can do for you. Ask what you can do for California. This is a moonshot. Going from 5 to 100% wind power there. So
yeah.
that's
By the way,
exciting.
you mentioned Gray Davis, and I was involved when Schwarzenegger when they did the recall of Gray Davis and Schwarzenegger became governor because he was so liberal. And you look back at Gray Davis today, he'd be a raging conservative compared to the liberals in Sacramento today. He would.
Yeah, it's frightening. Steve Moore, Wall Street Journal columnist, chief economist for CNN. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Have a great week. Bye.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what